Have you ever wondered why some people leave you feeling drained, confused, or somehow diminished after spending time with them? Have you noticed how certain individuals seem to carry discord wherever they go, turning harmony into chaos, trust into suspicion, and peace into restlessness? Perhaps you have felt that invisible weight that settles upon your spirit when you encounter those who speak much but say little of worth, who promise everything but deliver nothing of substance. The great teacher Confucius understood this deeply. He knew that the company we keep shapes not only our days, but our very character. He observed that just as clear water becomes muddy when stirred with unclean hands, so too does a cultivated mind become clouded when exposed to those who have abandoned the way. This is not mere coincidence or weakness on our part. This is the natural consequence of allowing disorder to influence order, of permitting those who have lost their moral center to disturb our own. In his wisdom, Confucius identified 6 types of people whose presence brings not growth but decay, not wisdom but confusion, not virtue but corruption. These are not merely difficult individuals or those who occasionally stumble in their conduct. These are people who have fundamentally turned away from righteousness, who have chosen to walk paths that lead others astray. To recognize them is not to judge harshly, but to protect the cultivation of our own character and the harmony of our households. The first of these dangerous companions is the person of empty words and grand promises. You know them well, though you may not have recognized their true nature. They speak with great eloquence about virtue, about righteousness, about the importance of family and duty. Their words flow like honey, sweet to the ear and pleasing to hear. They promise to honor their commitments, to stand by their friends, to uphold what is right and just. Yet when the time comes for action, when circumstances call for the very virtues they proclaimed, they vanish like mist before the morning sun. Confucius observed that such people are like beautifully painted vessels that crack when filled with water. Their words are crafted to impress, not to reflect genuine intention. They have learned that speaking of virtue often brings the same immediate rewards as practicing virtue, but with far less effort required. They borrow the language of the noble without possessing the heart of the noble. And in doing so, they not only deceive others, but gradually lose touch with their own authentic nature. Why are such people dangerous? Because they teach us to doubt the very foundations of trust and sincerity. When we repeatedly encounter those whose words bear no fruit in action, we begin to question whether anyone truly means what they say. We start to become cynical about human nature itself, wondering if all expressions of virtue are merely performances. This cynicism, once it takes root, becomes like a poison that spreads through every relationship, every commitment, every moment of faith we might otherwise offer to the world. Moreover, these individuals create confusion about what virtue actually looks like. A young person learning about righteousness might observe someone who speaks beautifully about moral principles, yet acts without integrity, and conclude that this contradiction is normal, even acceptable. The damage extends beyond the immediate relationship to the very fabric of moral understanding in our communities. The second type of person Confucius warned against is the one who sows discord through whispered words and carefully planted doubts. Unlike those who speak falsely in public, these individuals work in shadows, approaching you with seeming concern and friendship. They come bearing stories about others, tales of supposed betrayals, rumors of hidden motives. They present themselves as loyal friends who feel obligated to share what they have heard, who worry about your welfare and want to protect you from deception. Yet observe closely what happens in their wake. Where once there was trust between friends, suspicion begins to grow. Where families once gathered in harmony, tension settles like dust on furniture. Where communities once worked together toward common goals, factions begin to form. The discord sower does not create these divisions through force or open conflict. Instead, they plant tiny seeds of doubt that grow slowly but surely into great trees of mistrust. Confucius understood that human relationships are like delicate gardens that require careful tending. Trust grows slowly, like a precious plant that needs consistent care and protection from harsh weather. But doubt spreads quickly, like weeds that can overtake even the most carefully cultivated ground. The person who specializes in planting these weeds of suspicion destroys not only individual relationships, but the very possibility of community itself. What makes these individuals particularly dangerous is their skill at appearing virtuous while they work their destruction. They often present their tale-bearing as concern for justice, their gossip as a desire to help you see the truth. They may even believe their own justifications, having convinced themselves that their destructive behavior serves some higher purpose. Yet the fruit of their actions always reveals their true nature. Where they go, harmony dies. The third dangerous type is the person who lives without restraint or proper boundaries. These individuals have abandoned the practice of self-cultivation that Confucius taught was essential for human flourishing. They follow every impulse, satisfy every desire, and justify every excess. They speak loudly when quietness would be appropriate, laugh when solemnity is called for, and indulge their appetites without regard for propriety or the impact on others. At first glance, such people might seem merely undisciplined or perhaps even refreshingly spontaneous. But their lack of self-control creates chaos that extends far beyond their own lives. Like a stone thrown into still water, their actions create ripples that disturb the peace of everyone around them. They demand attention when others need quiet reflection. They create drama when situations call for calm consideration. They consume resources that might otherwise support the well-being of the whole community. Confucius taught that self-restraint is not a burden, but a foundation for genuine freedom. The person who cannot control their impulses becomes a slave to them, blown about by every passing wind of desire or emotion. More importantly, they become incapable of the steady, reliable conduct that makes true relationships and meaningful responsibilities possible. You cannot build anything lasting with someone who changes direction with every shift in their mood or appetite. When we spend time with those who live without boundaries, we begin to question the value of our own self-discipline. Their apparent freedom from rules and restraints can make our commitment to virtue seem unnecessary, even foolish. Why should we practice moderation when they seem to enjoy life so fully without it? Why should we consider the impact of our actions on others when they appear so content, thinking only of themselves? Yet this apparent contentment is an illusion. The person without self-restraint may experience momentary pleasures, but they cannot know the deep satisfaction that comes from living in harmony with the moral order of the universe. They cannot experience the joy of being trusted, the peace of having a clear conscience, or the strength that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself to do what is right, even when it is difficult. When it is difficult. The fourth type of person who brings danger to those around them is one who has allowed pride to consume their capacity for learning and growth. These individuals believe they have already reached the pinnacle of wisdom and virtue. They speak as if their understanding is complete, their judgment infallible, their way of seeing the world the only correct path. When others offer different perspectives or gentle corrections, they dismiss these gifts with scorn or anger. When circumstances reveal the limitations of their knowledge, they blame external forces rather than examining their own understanding. Confucius taught that the wise person remains humble before the vastness of what can be learned, like a student who bows deeply before entering the hall of study. The truly cultivated individual understands that wisdom grows through questioning, through admitting ignorance, through remaining open to instruction from any source that offers genuine insight. Even the youngest child or the simplest farmer may possess understanding that escapes the learned scholar. But the person consumed by pride has closed the door to such learning. These individuals are dangerous because they cannot adapt when their methods fail or their understanding proves incomplete. Like a tree that refuses to bend in the storm, they break rather than flex when life presents challenges that require new approaches. They lead their families into difficulty by insisting on courses of action that circumstances have proven unwise. They damage their communities by refusing to consider alternatives when their initial plans create problems. More subtly, they poison the atmosphere of growth around them. When someone believes they have nothing left to learn, they create an environment where others also stop learning. Children raised by such people often become either rebellious against all authority or fearfully dependent on the judgment of others, having never learned the balanced approach of respectful questioning. Students taught by such individuals learn to repeat rather than to think, to conform rather than to genuinely understand. The person who cannot learn also cannot truly teach, for teaching requires understanding where others stand in their journey toward wisdom. It requires patience with questions, comfort with admitting the limits of one's own knowledge, and joy in watching others discover truths for themselves. The proud person treats teaching as an opportunity to display their superiority rather than as a sacred duty to guide others toward their own understanding. The fifth dangerous type is the person who has abandoned loyalty in favor of constant calculation of personal advantage. These individuals appear friendly and helpful, but their friendship extends only as far as their benefit. When you prosper, they seek your company and praise your wisdom. When you face difficulties, they become scarce as morning dew. When circumstances change and different associations might serve them better, they shift their allegiance without shame or explanation. Such people understand the forms of loyalty but not its essence. They know the proper words to speak about friendship and duty, the correct gestures to make during ceremonies of respect, the appropriate gifts to offer during important occasions. Yet all of this external correctness conceals an inner emptiness where genuine commitment should reside. They treat relationships like merchants treat goods, always calculating which connections will yield the greatest profit in reputation, resources, or protection. Confucius recognized that loyalty is not mere sentiment, but the foundation upon which all stable human relationships must be built. Without it, families dissolve into competing interests, communities fracture into temporary alliances, and rulers cannot depend upon their ministers. The person who abandons loyalty undermines the very possibility of trust, turning human society into a marketplace where everything and everyone has a price. The danger of such individuals extends beyond their direct betrayals. They teach others through their example that loyalty is foolish, that only naive people maintain commitments when those commitments become inconvenient. Young people observing such behavior learn to protect themselves by never fully committing to anyone or anything, creating a generation that knows how to make agreements but not how to keep them. Moreover, these calculating individuals create an atmosphere of suspicion wherever they go. Others begin to wonder whether expressions of friendship are genuine or merely strategic. People start to question the motives behind kind gestures, helpful advice, or offers of assistance. The social fabric that depends upon basic trust begins to unravel, leaving everyone more isolated and defensive. The sixth and final type of dangerous person is one who has embraced deception as their primary means of moving through the world. Unlike those who occasionally bend the truth to avoid embarrassment or spare others' feelings, these individuals have made dishonesty their fundamental approach to every situation. They lie when the truth would serve them equally well, as if deception has become more natural to them than honesty. They create elaborate false narratives about their accomplishments, their intentions, and their past actions. These masters of deception often possess considerable skill in reading others and telling them what they wish to hear. They study people carefully, learning their hopes, fears, and desires, then craft their words to match these inner longings. They promise the ambitious person great advancement, assure the worried parent that their children are safe, tell the lonely person that they are valued and understood. Yet none of these assurances reflect genuine commitment or authentic understanding. The person who lives by deception becomes like an actor who has forgotten their true face beneath all the masks they wear. They lose touch with their own authentic nature, their real capabilities, their genuine feelings. Eventually, they may no longer know the difference between truth and falsehood in their own hearts. They become strangers to themselves, unable to form real relationships because they no longer know who they truly are beneath all their performances. Confucius understood that truth is not merely about factual accuracy, but about alignment between inner reality and outer expression. The truthful person lives in harmony with themselves and with the moral order of the universe. They can be relied upon because their words reflect their genuine intentions. Their promises emerge from real commitment, and their expressions of feeling arise from authentic emotion. The deceiver destroys this harmony in themselves and in others. They create confusion about what is real, making it difficult for honest people to navigate relationships and responsibilities. They waste the time and energy of others who must constantly verify and double-check information that should be reliable. Most importantly, they corrupt the very possibility of meaningful communication, turning words into weapons rather than bridges between human hearts. When we encounter any of these 6 types of dangerous individuals, Confucius counseled neither harsh judgment nor immediate rejection, but careful discernment and appropriate boundaries. We must protect the cultivation of our own character while remaining compassionate toward those who have lost their way. For in understanding what to avoid, we better understand what to cultivate within ourselves and what to seek in those we choose as companions on the path toward virtue. The recognition of these dangerous types is only the beginning of wisdom. For once we understand what threatens the cultivation of virtue, we must learn how to respond with the balance that Confucius taught is the mark of the cultivated person. We cannot simply flee from all who display these troubling qualities, for they are part of the world we inhabit. Neither can we expose ourselves carelessly to their influence, believing our own virtue will somehow transform them through proximity alone. The sage teaches us to move like water around obstacles, finding the path that preserves our own clarity while avoiding unnecessary conflict. When we encounter the person of empty promises, we listen with courtesy, but do not build our plans upon their words. We observe their actions over time, allowing reality to reveal what their speech conceals. We neither accuse them openly of deception nor pretend that their promises carry weight. Instead, we conduct ourselves as if we expect nothing from them beyond what they have already demonstrated through consistent behavior. This approach requires the cultivation of inner stillness, for it is natural to hope that this time their words will match their deeds, that this commitment will prove different from all the previous ones that dissolved like morning mist. The heart wishes to trust, and this wish is not foolish, but reflects our proper understanding that trust should be the foundation of human relationships. Yet wisdom teaches us to distinguish between appropriate hope and willful blindness to repeated patterns. When facing the sower of discord, we must become like the mountain that remains unmoved by shifting winds. We listen to their whispered concerns with a calm mind, neither dismissing them entirely nor accepting them without examination. We ask ourselves what fruit their previous counsel has borne, whether their warnings have led to greater harmony or deeper division. We consider the source of their information and the spirit in which it is offered. Most importantly, we refuse to become carriers of their poison. When they bring us tales about others, we do not pass these tales along like merchants trading in rumors. We speak directly to those involved when clarity is needed, or we remain silent when the matter does not concern us. We understand that our reputation for wisdom depends not on how much we know about the failings of others, but on how carefully we guard our own speech and preserve the dignity of those around us. The person who lives without restraint presents a different challenge, for their behavior often appears joyful and spontaneous in a world that sometimes feels bound by excessive rules and careful proprieties. They laugh loudly at feasts, speak freely about their desires, and seem unburdened by the constant self-examination that characterizes the path of cultivation. In their presence, we might begin to question whether our own discipline serves any real purpose. Here we must remember that true joy comes not from the absence of boundaries, but from the proper ordering of our inner nature. The person who can control their impulses when control serves, virtue possesses a freedom that the impulsive person never knows. They can choose their responses rather than being driven by whatever emotion or desire happens to be strongest in the moment. They can be relied upon by others precisely because they have learned to rely upon themselves. In learning to recognize these 6 dangerous companions, we do not become harsh judges, but wise gardeners who understand which influences nourish virtue and which destroy it. The path of cultivation requires both compassion for those who have lost their way and protection of the harmony we seek to build within ourselves and our households. Choose your companions as carefully as a ruler chooses his ministers, for they will shape not only your days, but the very person you become.